Number 8. Gun-toting Texas mom gets involved. In August 2018, a Snapchat dispute between two female classmates erupted into a real-life brawl outside one of the girls' homes in southeast Houston. Shocking footage from a bystander showed two girls wrestling, with a third girl trying to get involved. In the meantime, one of the girls' mothers, Shade Lockett, pulled what appeared to be a handgun and pointed it at the third girl. Lockett could be seen trying to break the fight up while the two teens continued to fight and pulled each other's hair. Venetia Jones, who filmed the shocking video, told ABC 13 that she and other onlookers were scared for their lives when Lockett pulled the gun. She condemned Lockett's decision to take such seemingly drastic action during a fight between teenage girls. But the footage didn't tell the entire story, according to Lockett, who claimed that the weapon was her son's toy BB gun. She said that she only got involved after noticing that someone at the scene had a knife, at which point she went to her car to retrieve the weapon, stating in her words it was either the crowbar or the BB gun. The grandmother of the other girl involved in the fight reportedly filed a complaint with the police, but it's unclear whether any arrests were made. Number 7. Substitute teacher versus racist student. In April 2024, cell phone footage of a fight between a high school student and a substitute teacher in Las Vegas went viral, with many wondering what led up to the vicious brawl. Identified by police as 27-year-old Raekwon Smith, the substitute teacher approached a student and told him that he had exited the school's gym through the wrong doors. According to witnesses, the student began hurling insults and racial slurs at Smith. Before the fight even began, bystanders attempted to restrain both parties, but there was nothing they could do to stop Smith from raining blows on the student once he lost his composure. In the video, the student could be seen falling to the floor, possibly losing consciousness, before Smith stood over him and struck him again. After shouting some final words at the student, the rampaging substitute walked away. Smith faces a slew of charges, including battery resulting in serious bodily harm, assault of a school pupil on school property, vehicle activity, threatening to do bodily harm to a public school student, and interfering with a student from attending school. The student involved was also reportedly arrested. The judge overseeing Smith's case released him from custody during his first court appearance, along with strict instructions to stay away from the victim. Needless to say, Smith is also no longer allowed to work as a substitute teacher. Number 6. The Apple River stabbing. One person was killed and 4 others were injured while tubing on Wisconsin's Apple River in 2022 when a dispute between a man and a group of young people erupted into physical violence. It's unclear exactly what happened before someone began recording video of the confrontation, which showed members of the group telling 52-year-old Nikolai Mew to get away and pushing him around. At the time, Mew was supposedly looking for a phone that a member of his own group had dropped. In his efforts to find the device, he had become separated from his own friends and somehow crossed paths with the group he was having problems with. At some point, Mew pulled a knife and started stabbing the victims, who ranged in age from 17 to 24 years old. Emergency responders arrived at the scene to find Isaac Schumann unresponsive. He was rushed to a nearby hospital where he died from his injuries. The other victims were injured but survived. In the meantime, police found Mew downriver and took him into custody in connection with the stabbing. He claimed he acted in self-defense when the tubers attacked him, but a video captured by the victims appeared to show that Mew had several opportunities to leave the scene without resorting to violence. He was charged with first-degree intentional homicide and 4 counts of first-degree attempted homicide. Mew was found guilty of 6 charges in April 2024, including first-degree reckless homicide, 4 counts of recklessly endangering safety, and 1 count of battery. He's due to be sentenced in July of 2024, and while the convictions are lesser than the original charges, they're still serious and can carry a punishment of up to 97 years in prison. Number 5. Homeless encampment goes up in flames. Seattle resident Verley Pitts was working at a tire store in early 2020 when he spotted a tent on fire in a nearby homeless encampment. He had no plans to get involved until he saw a man shoving a woman into the tent and then straddling and strangling her. Pitts left his workplace and calmly tried to intervene, but he became the new target of the man's aggression. Footage of the confrontation showed the suspect swinging repeatedly at Pitts, who maintained his composure as he pulled the man away from the victim and said that it wasn't okay to hit women. He was later praised for the amount of restraint and self-control he displayed during the tense interaction. Speaking with local station KIRO7, Pitts said, "There is what's needed and what is excessive. There's no reason to be excessive." He said he didn't think of his actions as courageous or life-risking and emphasized the importance of stepping in to help someone in danger rather than simply standing around and watching. Number 4. Viral Jacksonville Brawl. In May of 2017, the sheriff's office in Jacksonville, Florida, received viral video clips of 2 large brawls between women that had recently taken place in the city. According to police, the first fight took place in a shopping plaza where 18-year-old Jontiana D. Pitts allegedly attacked a pregnant 26-year-old woman who defended herself but didn't fight back. About an hour and a half later, Facebook Live footage appeared to show Pitts attacking the same victim with a baseball bat while a security guard tried to break the women up. Pitts was charged with aggravated battery, criminal mischief, and battery on a security officer. 2 other women, 24-year-old Zakira Marie Johnson and 21-year-old Renetta Siobhan Wright, were also accused of participating in the fight. Authorities claimed that Wright could be seen punching 2 victims and kicking one of them in the head when she was on the ground and incapable of defending herself. She also allegedly grabbed a baseball bat and hit a vehicle with it. Both Johnson and Wright faced criminal charges, including for fighting. Following the arrests, Jontiana Pitts' family spoke out in her defense. They claimed that several young women had confronted her at her workplace and threatened to beat her up. Jontiana's aunt, Tiara Hernandez, told Action News Jax that she did not think the charges against her niece were fair. Hernandez also clarified that Jontiana's mother got involved in an effort to break up the fight, but that she wasn't participating in it, despite rumors to the contrary and accusations that the woman was a bad mother. Meanwhile, a social media user with the same name as the security guard who tried splitting up the fight wrote that she thought it was unfair for Pitts to be charged with assaulting her because that wasn't what happened. The outcomes of the women's criminal cases are unclear. Number 3. Missouri teen left in critical condition. In March 2024, police in St. Louis, Missouri responded to the scene of a reported fight between multiple teenage girls. The fight left one young woman critically injured with a cracked skull and a brain bleed. Officers arrived at the scene to find the victim unresponsive and twitching as she lay helplessly on the pavement. Viral footage of the brawl showed Kaylee Gain being thrown to the ground and punched in the head by one of her adversaries. The girls could also be seen slamming Gain's head repeatedly into the concrete sidewalk. Gain was rushed to the hospital where she spent 2 weeks in the intensive care unit in a coma. 20 days after the attack, her family revealed that she had started speech therapy but couldn't communicate verbally very well and was still unable to walk on her own. She has since returned home and faces a lengthy road to recovery, and the extent of her brain damage is unclear. According to the most recent available updates on her condition, she suffers from memory loss and is missing part of her skull. In the meantime, at least one teen has been arrested in connection with the fight. Whether or not she'll be tried as an adult remains to be seen, but for now she remains in juvenile custody on suspicion of multiple felonies. Shortly after video of the fight went viral, news outlets reported that Gain had been suspended from school the day before the altercation due to a fight with another student. It's unclear exactly what led to the fight resulting in Gain's head injury, but a source told the New York Post that the teen and her combatant were members of rival friend groups. The defendant's attorney described his client as a standout student with no prior history of violence. He claimed that the suspect has been mischaracterized, but the public likely won't learn those details until the young woman has her day in court and gets a chance to explain her side of things. Number 2. Misunderstanding leads to manslaughter. What began as a confrontation between 2 teenage girls in Augusta, Georgia in March 2016 erupted into an all-out brawl that broke out 2 days later. The disagreement between the girls reportedly had something to do with a boy. Go figure. School officials split the teens up, but lingering tensions between the parties and their family members led to threats to settle the dispute on the streets. People from both camps were present at the pre-arranged time and place, and as many as 50 people jumped into the fray. Some participants were armed with baseball bats and knives, and one driver even rushed at the crowd in their Dodge Charger after someone struck the vehicle with a bat. During the clash, a young man named Demaje Bell was stabbed in the neck. A 2-minute video clip of the massive fight ended with someone screaming to call 911 as Bell ran past the camera clinging to their neck. He drove away from the scene and stopped for help when he saw a uniformed police officer. Bell was rushed to the hospital, where he died from his injuries 2 days later. The stabbing occurred in a particularly tragic context. Bell had stayed out of the fight almost entirely, remaining inside a relative's house before stepping outside to see what was going on. He was stabbed by a close friend, Demetrius Harris, who was attempting to attack another participant who had broken his arm with a bat. In the video, Harris could be seen holding a knife, which he claimed he found in some nearby bushes. It was clear pretty much from the beginning that Bell wasn't Harris's intended victim. But there was no excuse for the violence, and in the state of Georgia, a person can be convicted of felony murder if someone dies during the commission of a felony. A conviction does not require intent, and the charge carries an automatic life sentence. At least 9 suspects between the ages of 18 and 39 were charged with the crime, including Demetrius Harris. In early 2018, Harris pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter. As a first-time offender with no prior felonies on his record, he was eligible for sentencing under Georgia's First Offender Act. That meant that the case could eventually be taken off his criminal record as long as he fulfills his debt to society with no further problems with the law. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. During his sentencing hearing, Harris apologized to Bell's family for his actions. He clarified that he never meant to hurt or kill his friend, who was actually living with him at the time of the stabbing. Harris hoped to receive forgiveness from Bell's loved ones, but at the time of his sentencing, they weren't quite ready to take that step. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. Number 1. Firefighter charged in fatal fight. A falling out between 2 friends who were once close and had even lived together ended in tragedy in April 2024. According to witnesses, Taylor Height entered the Little Italy restaurant in Memphis, Tennessee, and began fighting 26-year-old Cameron Land. Both men were thrown out of the restaurant and continued the brawl outside while other members of their group looked on. Surveillance footage showed the moment Land and Height began pushing each other around on the sidewalk. Soon enough, fists were thrown, and the former besties were fighting on the ground. According to news reports, Land could be seen punching Height at least 3 times. Sadly, one of those blows proved deadly. Emergency responders arrived to find Height unresponsive on the sidewalk after hitting his head against the concrete. He succumbed to his injuries, and Land was charged with criminally negligent homicide. In the 4 years leading up to the fatal clash between former friends, Land worked as a firefighter for the city of Memphis. Following his arrest, he was let go from his job. The accused killer's bail was originally set at $350,000, but a judge lowered it to $5,000 after hearing from Land's lawyer that the confrontation appeared to be a mutual fight that ended badly. Land's attorney also claimed that it looked like Height continued fighting back after Land's last blow. He insisted his client is a first-time offender who poses no danger to the public, but a collective gasp could be heard in the courtroom following the judge's decision to decrease Land's bail. Land posted the lowered amount and remains free while awaiting the outcome of his case.
9. In-flight fiasco. While awaiting takeoff from Salvador, Brazil for Sao Paulo in early 2023, a massive fight broke out among more than a dozen women on a Gol Airlines plane. It all started when a woman asked a fellow passenger if she could trade seats with her child. When the request was turned down, one of the women allegedly flew into a rage, and the situation snowballed from there. Things got so out of control that one woman's chest spilled out of her tank top, forcing her to cover up with her hands. Footage captured by onlookers showed cabin crew members desperately trying to break the fight up as the brawling passengers climbed over seats, threw punches, and pulled each other's hair. After employees finally got the situation under control, 15 people were removed from the plane, and the flight proceeded along its scheduled route. 8. Brooklyn brawl spirals out of control. After becoming entangled in a vicious rivalry in 2014, 2 young women named Imani Lewis and Naisha Bates decided to settle their differences in the street. Lewis brought her boyfriend and several female friends with her to the fight, which took place in Brooklyn's Clinton Hill neighborhood. Bates also brought some people with her, including her brother, Ramel Ashby. Complete mayhem broke out between the parties as the participants slapped, punched, kicked, and wrestled each other. During the free-for-all, which lasted for about 3 minutes, Rommel Ashby punched Lewis in the face. Her boyfriend, Rogelio King, came to her defense and punched Ashby back, at which point someone pulled a gun and fired 8 shots into the crowd, striking King and 2 others. Luckily, the victims survived their injuries. Authorities accused Ashby of being the gunman and charged him with 14 crimes, including multiple counts of attempted murder. The fight was captured on camera, but the jury concluded that it failed to show who the shooter was, and Ashby was ultimately acquitted of the charges. For Lewis and several others, the arguably most embarrassing consequence of the incident was the airing of their personal business in court. Throughout Ashby's trial, witnesses testified that Lewis was running an illicit prostitution and strip dancing ring at the time the fight occurred. According to prosecutors, this shady side hustle may have played a role in the feud between Lewis and Bates. Obscene text messages between the group's members were revealed in court, and at least one witness admitted to being part of the ring. She was clearly embarrassed as she left the courtroom covering her face. 7. Shailia Maruka and Alexia Tooley. During the early morning hours one day in June of 2019, police rushed to a pub in Bellevue, Florida in response to a reported shooting. The bartender told responding officers that a fight had broken out, and someone had fired a single gunshot, causing everyone to flee the establishment. Surveillance footage of the altercation showed a young woman in a black dress, identified by law enforcement as 20-year-old Alexia Elizabeth Tooley, pulling a semi-automatic handgun out of her purse and pointing it toward the ceiling before hitting another woman on the head with it. Another woman, identified as 19-year-old Shailia Chanel Maruka, also allegedly brandished a gun and pistol-whipped the same woman that Tooley had just hit. The woman who was hit in the head could be seen throwing punches at Maruka when everyone inside the bar suddenly ducked down. Police learned of the shooting after a patient showed up at a local emergency room with a gunshot wound. Authorities charged both Maruka and Tooley in connection with the incident. Both women were charged with improper exhibition of a firearm, although the charge was later dropped for Maruka. Additionally, Tooley pleaded no contest to carrying a concealed weapon. The judge overseeing Tooley's case ordered her to perform 200 hours of community service and to complete an anger management course. She was also fined around $300. And according to the Ocala Star Banner, Maruka received a similar sentence. 6. Alexis Faulkner and Sabrina Palma. While responding to a call about a fight one Saturday evening in 2019, the police in Safford, Arizona arrived at the scene to find a group of women surrounding a truck that was stopped on the wrong side of the street. One of the vehicle's windows was shattered, and a suspect who was later identified as Alexis Faulkner was standing nearby with a baseball bat in her hand. Ignoring officers' commands to put the bat down, Faulkner began shouting at a woman named Sabrina Palma. While the cops took Faulkner into custody, Palma allegedly charged toward her, shouting and hurling threats. In the meantime, a crowd of curious onlookers gathered to watch the drama unfold. The yelling and threats between Palma and Faulkner continued, even after they were both handcuffed and placed in the back of 2 separate squad cars. A witness told officers that she'd been riding around with Palma earlier that evening when the irate woman rushed out of her truck and began arguing with Faulkner. Palma had reportedly gotten involved with Faulkner's boyfriend, and instead of holding him accountable for his wandering ways, the women apparently blamed each other. In fact, the man only contributed to the chaos by allegedly luring Palma to a Walmart parking lot several nights earlier. When she got into his car, Faulkner attacked her from the back seat of her boyfriend's vehicle. Palma accused the man of pushing her out of the car during the fight, and Faulkner was cited for assault. When the police arrived to break up the altercation in the street later that week, Faulkner claimed that her romantic rival had started it by throwing rocks at her house. She admitted to smashing the window of Palma's truck and was charged with disorderly conduct and criminal damage. Palma was charged with disorderly conduct, which she was perfectly fine with, according to police, who said that she told them she wanted revenge against Faulkner, even if it meant going to jail. It seems like everything is captured on camera these days. 5. Jamie Messerly. Early one Monday morning in 2019, 911 dispatchers in Billings, Montana, received a call from a woman who claimed that her daughter had threatened to hurt her twin sister. Officers arrived at the residence to find Jamie Messerly with blood on her head. Messerly's sister, whose name was withheld from court documents, was bleeding profusely from a wound to her arm. The victim told the police that she and Messerly had been drinking with a friend when the argument broke out between them. She claimed that Messerly was really drunk when things turned violent. Messerly allegedly stood outside her bedroom door, threatening to kill the victim, who opened the door to find her twin standing there with a knife in her hand. After dodging an attempted cut to the neck, the victim said that she tried to wrestle the blade out of Messerly's hand, which was when she was stabbed in the arm. The friend, who was over when all hell broke loose, reportedly told the cops that the disagreement between the women initially seemed like a typical sisterly fight, but it quickly escalated into shouting and then became violent. He said he tried to calm Messerly down, but the situation continued to become more heated, even after the twins went to separate rooms. Messerly was arrested on suspicion of assault with a weapon, but the outcome of the case is unclear. 4. Kiani Phoenix. 26-year-old Kiani Phoenix had an unsettled argument with her ex's sister when the two crossed paths at a bodega in Far Rockaway, Queens, one morning in 2022. Surveillance footage would later show that the encounter started out as a shouting match and quickly devolved into a fist fight, with the women throwing punches and trying to rip each other's wigs off. They eventually took the brawl outside, where several bystanders tried unsuccessfully to separate them. One of the women, later identified by law enforcement as Phoenix, got into her car as the other continued to throw fists. She backed the vehicle up, repositioned it, and then stepped on the gas in an apparent attempt to mow down her opponent. Instead, the car rolled up onto the sidewalk and hit 59-year-old Milton Storch, who was seated on his walker outside the bodega as he enjoyed the morning sunrise. The vehicle knocked Storch off his walker and pinned him against the building before Phoenix calmly drove away from the scene. Unfortunately, Storch died from his injuries. Another victim who was injured during the incident was rushed to a nearby hospital and survived. Phoenix faces a slew of charges in connection with the hit and run, including murder, attempted murder, assault, and leaving the scene of an accident without reporting. The case is ongoing, but if she's convicted, she could face up to 25 years to life behind bars. 3. Natasha Noland. After attending a Brad Paisley concert in Santa Cruz, California in 2012, a group of more than a dozen highly intoxicated friends made the wise decision not to drive. Instead, they planned ahead and hired a party bus to take them home. Things somehow still went terribly wrong, however, despite this conscious effort to be responsible. During the drive home, 25-year-old Natasha Noland got into a catfight with another young woman named Colleen Martinez. One of the vehicle's doors opened, causing both women to spill out of the bus as it traveled along a highway at 45 miles per hour, 72.4 kilometers per hour. After landing on the hard pavement, Noland was dragged beneath the bus, and unfortunately, she died from her injuries. According to police, several members of the party left the scene, and witnesses initially seemed reluctant to cooperate. An investigation found that the door the women fell out of was broken, and that the owner of the party bus company had known about the problem for months. The door had popped out of place several times prior, and it only required a simple fix, yet nobody had bothered to repair it. Sadly, Noland's death and the injuries suffered by the other women who fell out of the bus were completely preventable. John Reno St. James, the owner of the party bus, was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 4 years in prison for failing to fix the faulty door. 2. Jasmine Nelson. 32-year-old Jasmine Nelson and a 26-year-old woman were entangled in an ongoing dispute when the tensions between them erupted into blows at a park in West Palm Beach, Florida one evening in 2022. A crowd gathered around to watch, and the fight was live-streamed on social media. What started as a fistfight quickly turned deadly when Nelson allegedly pulled out a gun and shot her opponent. Afterward, she fled the scene. Police arrived a short while later to find the victim lying dead in the parking lot. Footage of the fatal encounter shows the women punching each other beside a car when the unmistakable pop of a gunshot rings out. Right at that moment, the victim could be seen collapsing onto the pavement. It was then that the panicked bystanders fled in all directions, including those who had their cameras rolling just moments earlier. Nelson was taken into custody at a nearby restaurant later that day. She remains behind bars without bond on a pending second-degree murder charge. 1. Stacey DeGrandchamp and Holly Boisvert. On a Saturday night in 2002, police in Fort Wayne, Indiana were called back to the scene of a house party they'd been at earlier that evening to address a noise complaint. This time, they found a young woman lying in the driveway with life-threatening injuries. Stacey DeGrandchamp had been stabbed in the chest by her former friend, Holly Boisvert. She was rushed to a nearby hospital where, sadly, she died from her injuries. The occasional drama was nothing new for Stacey and Holly, who both had strong personalities and tended to butt heads. But the tensions between the pair reached a boiling point after Stacey began dating Holly's ex-boyfriend, Brandon Muff. By the time the night of the stabbing rolled around, the sparks between Stacey and Brandon had fizzled. But Stacey saw no harm in attending the house party, which was taking place at Brandon's residence. She and Holly were reportedly outraged when they realized that the other was at the party, and a shouting match quickly escalated into blows. When the fight ended, people noticed that Stacey appeared weak. She fell to the ground and began convulsing. Nobody realized that she'd been stabbed until bystanders rushed to her aid and noticed that her shirt was soaked in blood. Holly admitted to police that she and Stacey had fought, but she denied stabbing her former bestie. She suggested that perhaps Stacey had impaled her chest on a sharp object when she fell to the ground, and that her injuries were accidental. An autopsy revealed that the young woman had been stabbed, but police couldn't find the weapon, and some witnesses who had crucial information were less than forthcoming. No arrests were made, and the case soon went cold. A reluctant eyewitness finally came forward to law enforcement in 2019 and provided details that helped fill in the gaps that had prevented any arrests from being made in the past. Holly was surprised when detectives showed up on the doorstep of her home in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin to discuss the case. While they were there, they discovered that she still had the knife that she'd stabbed Stacey with. 18 years after the tragic encounter, Holly was taken into custody on a second-degree murder charge. She pleaded guilty to a reduced count of voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Between time off for good behavior and other factors that may help to shorten her time behind bars, she could see freedom as early as 2030. But Holly's loved ones were happy to finally see some measure of justice served.
Thanks for watching. Would you rather get in a bloody fistfight with your best friend or not be able to contact your best friend for 3 months? Let us know in the comments and remember to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.